Now, Jesus, lady. Hey, how you doing? What's up?
What's up?
Dick Durbin was just tweeting about how he was co-sponsoring a bill to end our dependence on Russian energy. So I was just chiming in with that. Everybody's all on board with this, you know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because, what have we talked about several times? Energy diversification,
Right.
and that's where like you said, having a bunch of different vehicles, having
Yeah.
gas, having electric, having I mean, I'd love to see hydrogen uh be one of the runners in there. And
Hell yeah.
the more diverse your energy sources are, the more diverse your energy usage is, the less likely you are to be affected by stuff like this.
I agree. Somebody said it really easily. The best way to get off of dependence of foreign energy is to get off of the dependence of foreign energy. You know? Anyway,
Mhm.
hey, welcome to Public Access America. My name is Jason. His name is Jeffrey. We are in a no-fly zone right now, so beware of that. We will shoot you down, Jeffrey. We will shoot you down.
I'm used to getting shot down. Wait, that's something
So
different.
like at the beginning of the week, I understood that a no-fly zone would be like devastating because we would have to shoot things in Russia that would shoot back at us, and that would start a problem, right? And then it became down to I was really mad at Israel around Tuesday because I was like, they have that Iron Dome technology. We have this Patriot technology. Why aren't we sending that in and giving it to them? And then somebody finally explained, well, it would take like about a year to train people on how to use that. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that makes sense. And then I was like, well, what about these fighter jets? Just give Ukraine the fighter jets. And then I was like, well, these fighter jets are all tagged with like NATO symbols, right? So it's like,
That doesn't mean anything. It's the issue is like, for example, everybody's like, oh, well, why don't we give them F-22s and F-35s? And the answer is their pilots aren't trained on them. That'd be
right,
like, that would be like, I mean, that would be like me handing you I would say like an old English manuscript and tell you to read it fluently. Yeah, there are
right.
some things that carry over, but you still have to learn how to actually go through the entire thing. And
Yeah,
that's the issue is that, if Ukrainian pilots were trained on F-15s, F-16s, F-18s, we got plenty of those. We could hand those
right.
over, but they're trained on MiGs, the big 29 and Sukhoi 25s, I think. And yeah, so it's just a matter of, even if, we could hand the technology over, that's not an issue. It's that their pilots are
Right.
trained on it. And so they literally, they wouldn't be able to use it.
Agreed. And so that's why we're stuck. But holy cow, like there was a shipment where the Turks are sending like unmanned fighter drones. That's
Mhm.
cool. The Czechs are sending like rifles and AK-47s. How cool is that? Like
Mhm.
Finland is sending these Stinger missiles. Uh, Thank you to Poland. Like I look down, we don't have any listenership in Russia anymore, by the way, but we do have a listenership in Poland. And thank you to all of our servicemen and women over there and all the volunteers that are taking care of the refugees. That's
Mhm.
so that is just so cool and open door. And I hope we'll get into stories later on about some problems with the process of immigration between
Mhm.
the border. But right now, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's working in effort with Ukraine. And hi, Ukraine. I understand you can still get us. Thank you to Elon Musk. So
Mhm.
things are working out. What I have a few quickies and stuff and stories and stuff, but what really scared you the most this week?
The fact that Putin keeps moving the goalpost and saying, um, if you keep allowing soldiers to, former soldiers to cross over into Ukraine to fight for Ukraine, we'll consider that an act of war. If you keep supplying arms to Ukraine, we'll consider that an act of war. If you keep
Right.
adding on sanctions, we'll consider that an act of war. At this point, Russia, Putin, I would say, Putin is looking uh, to just have his declaration for war.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And despite the fact that it's like, look, you know, if if you want this to end, just go the fuck home.
Right. Well, his only strategy now, I think, is to increase it into a world war conflict so that at the end he can say, see, we were all bad. That's his only out. I mean, otherwise, what can he do? He can't withdraw. He can't, there's no way the sanctions will ever be lifted because there's dead bodies. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's destroyed property. So even if Russia like said, "Oh, we're sorry. Yeah, we're to blame. Here's our concessions." You can't fix that because there's dead bodies.
Right.
And that's what confuses me. So I don't know. That was scary. They're overall moving the goalpost, the threats of nuclear conflicts, and then shooting at the. I just turned on the news and it was a nuclear plant on fire, and I was like, "Good Lord!" But by the end, I was like, "All right, everything is okay." But wow, that freaked me out for a good hot second. You know what I mean?
That was insane. And
Yeah.
that is absolutely insane. And unfortunately, like that, I don't I think that we're going to see more of that in the future.
Is that because of
Unfortunately.
stupidity or planning?
Yes.
Okay.
That was stupid planning is what that was.
Well, I mean, was like Vladimir Putin sitting in the Kremlin going, "Oh no," like, or was he like, "Yes, that's what I wanted." So
Well,
that's
and
what I'm curious about.
it's hard to say. Like at this
Yeah,
point, it's hard to say like what the hell he's thinking anymore. Like,
right. It's just he's using plans from the 19th century in, this war. And it's like, I don't think he realizes there's social media and nuclear power plants to contend with in a chaos driven atmosphere. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, just the fact of the matter that is that he is doing some really fucking dumb stuff.
right,
I was watching a clip yesterday of Russian Hind, it's a MiG-24 helicopter, just get absolutely decimated by a
right,
Stinger missile. Like, I don't think his calculation for what an air assault would look like, and this is and I would say this is why um, he is not he just rolled over Ukraine is that in the 8 years since Crimea, we had a lot of time to train Ukraine on how to use all of these different weapons, and
right.
they have just been absolutely decimating the Russian armed forces. In between the Javelin missiles taking out armored columns and the Stinger missiles taking out helicopters, it has left very little for their air force to be able to, fight the Ukrainians. And even then, you've
Mm-hmm.
had, the Ukrainian pilots are doing a fantastic job uh, with taking on the Russians,
Oh,
despite
for
using
sure.
older aircraft and older airframes. And then one of the propaganda things you saw going around was, oh, there's no way that a plane like that could take down one of our newer aircraft. And I'm like,
Yeah,
well, if your
sure
pilot
it
isn't
could.
getting any fucking flying time and your pilots aren't that well trained, or
Mm-hmm.
simple, or just the simple fact that you underestimate how hard the Ukrainians are going to fight,
Yeah,
you know they got nothing to lose except for their homeland.
right. And the Russian soldiers, they don't want to fight this war. A lot of them are just giving up. They're just running their trucks out of gas, getting out and going back to Russia. I mean, walking that way.
Right, and the number of people who are, getting captured, and real they're it's demoralizing because they were told that they were beating Nazis, and then they find out they are the Nazis.
Right. That they're killing Russians.
It's really just, it's unfortunate. I mean, even Germany had to go out and say, look, we're kind of the experts on Nazism and you guys aren't fighting it.
Right.
You know,
That's
that's
true.
that's pretty that's pretty oof.
Yeah, no, I get it. Ukraine keeps asking for things, and I'm like, you understand we can't do that. Like, come up with another direction, and because they're just crying for a no-fly zone, and it's like we can't do that. Is there anything else? So here's my simple, stupid idea, right? And that is just to send them American flags and tell them to put them on top of their buildings. I think my thought was when Zelensky applied for the EU. He should have gotten stamped and approved. I think the UK should have sent them paperwork to make them members of the UK. I think America should have made Ukraine a district of America. I think it should have just immediately happened. You know what I mean? And
That
I
would be
just,
an interesting concept. I mean, we have no precedent in that, and
who
I mean,
cares? Let's do it. Let's try it.
this is where it's really tough right now because, like, for example, you have Finland and Sweden saying, look, we're having to redo our calculus. We never wanted to be a part of NATO, but Russia,
Right.
you're literally off your fucking rocker. We don't know that we got much choice.
Right.
And Putin's just like, fuck it, I'll go to war with you too. And it's like,
Hmm.
that's a terrible idea because I guarantee you, if you go to war with Finland or Sweden, the Norwegians are coming in swinging.
Oh, of course, but we're not.
Well, and that's the thing is that we would at that point.
Could we?
Hmm.
What's the difference? They're not
They're not NATO members, but
right.
by that point, the war is already spreading throughout Europe. And what choice are we going to have?
Well, what if he just finishes off Ukraine and then in 10 years attacks Finland?
They're not going to have the resources to run that kind of a
Mm.
war for that long.
They'll be in NATO by then. That's my point. Everybody's gonna want to. Somebody said,
Moldova
who's,
wants to be in NATO.
yeah,
Sweden and
Moldova is
Finland.
scared to death that they're next. And the truth is he's testing the fences in every country. And
Hmm.
somebody said, who's next? And I said, the weakest one is next. You know what I mean? Because that's obvious. If that's us, then that's us. If it's Moldova, then it's Moldova. If it's Poland, it's going to be Poland. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's one of those things where it was Moldova was I want to say they were looking. There was question about whether or not Moldova would become part of, was it Bulgaria? I want to say they're right next to. My geography's good, but it sometimes is a
Yeah.
little bit questionable. So let me pull this up here real
Well,
quick.
countries change names, they change statuses, but that's all done without war, right? Empires made these borders, even in the Middle
Romania. It
East.
was Romania. Excuse me. It's Romania.
Oh, I dig
So
Romania, man. I dig
so
Romania.
so I couldn't remember if it was Bulgaria or Romania, but it's Romania. And part of why Moldova is its own country is that Romania and Moldova just couldn't quite get along enough.
Sure.
But if Moldova decided to fold into Romania, then they would be a NATO country by default.
Okay. I'm okay with that too.
And so there's a bunch of questions in that regard too, whether or not you could do that. But then you have this breakaway uh, autonomous region in Moldova called Transnistria, which they basically it was like the
Oh,
Soviet Union never quit.
all right. So like Dunlop or whatever they are in Ukraine, those little segments.
Oh, no, no, no. This is like straight up like they still are communists. Like actual,
Right. They're a separatist region within a country.
yeah, they're a separatist region, but it's, they pretty much they function the way the old Soviet Union did, and they still, follow the teachings of Lenin and Stalin and all that other fun stuff. Like
Wow.
it's literally like a fucking time bubble where it just didn't quit. It's crazy to watch. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but
Is it prospering?
no, well, no, and they also have 1,500 Russian troops there.
All right. I mean, like I keep saying communism as a philosophy might work if people just worked it. They're not working the system. They go to kleptocrat pretty quick. Is that's what's happening in that region too, you know?
Oh, I guarantee it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens with any communist country. I mean, Orwell summed it up in Animal Farm quite fantastic. Some pigs are more equal than others, and that's really all it boils down
Right.
to. And that was the difference between communism and capitalism. Capitalism never pretended otherwise.
Right. Um, yeah, that's the whole point of it. Once you get rid of everything else and it's only the pigs, then yeah, the lesser pigs are the lessers, right? And it's
Hmm.
there's always going to be inequality. Like I think equality is part of the matrix, like the carrot we chase, you know.
Oh,
We're
absolutely.
never going to have it, but it's always fun to try, you know.
Well, and that's one of those things. Like why it's one of the biggest reasons why I don't believe in banning books, no matter how fucking dumb they are. Like I'm sorry, but when you look at the Communist Manifesto on paper, it looks fantastic.
Right.
Practice never works. It will never work. And
Right.
everybody keeps going, well, but that wasn't real communism. But that wasn't real communism. It's like you understand that the way that all of these communist movements started out look a lot like what quote unquote real communism was supposed to be. But
Mm-hmm.
it only takes about 20 years, and then all of a sudden it looks exactly like what it looked like in China, in the Soviet Union, in Cuba, in Yugoslavia, in any name any communist country, and it exactly goes that direction every single time. Why?
Yep.
Because power corrupts, and you put people in power, they're going to inevitably take as much as they can, and especially when they can sell a good enough lie that everybody's going to be equal.
Right. No, I think I'm a big fan of the movie Gandhi, and I know what the UK did to oppress places like India and Australia and the Bahamas. You know, the way
Mhm.
they treated the people, there was no equality there, and
Right.
those people all had to fight for it. But I just don't. I think communism might work, and I just think like that's the same thing they think about capitalism. In 10 years, capitalism will always go to this fending for ourselves, the rich at the top mentality.
Well,
And
and that's
but
and I, and
they all stray through socialism. You know what I
but
mean?
that's
It's
and that's the thing is like I would say that what you see with the with communism, where you have that group of people that tend to take advantage of and have the most wealth, and that group in capitalism,
mhm,
those are juxtapositions of each other. They're at complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And the reality is that when you look at communes, they work on a very small scale.
right. I'm
and
thinking of
and
sunny Ukraine, the old
you know
place that, yeah.
and that's the thing is it's well, and that's like Ukraine's not even communist. They're not even close to that.
No, but there was a city called Sunny where
Mhm.
communism was like the utopia that Russians came to Ukraine and made this place sunny, and it was like a co-op, just like we always
Mhm.
talk about. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
you're right. In a small community level, it
And this
works with the group
absolutely.
working for the whole,
And
right?
that's the thing is that it's really easy for it to work on small scales. Why? Because everybody knows everybody, and the idea of screwing somebody over doesn't feel good.
Right.
But the moment that it moves into any type of a larger scale, it starts to fall apart really quickly. And I get why.
Yeah.
Everybody values, and that's part of the problem is that everybody values their work, their labor, their anything differently.
Hmm.
And so it's really unfortunate that people don't see that. It's
Right.
it would I would love it if all of us could actually work together, all of us have equality of opportunity, equality of outcome, equality of any number of given things. But the reality is that no matter how hard you try, that's never going to be the case. That doesn't mean that we should just give up and say fuck it, free for all, like what we're seeing on the other end of the spectrum of
Right.
capitalism. But I mean, even if you look at Biden's State of the Union, capitalism without competition is not capitalism.
Right. And he's a capitalist.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that you and I've talked about several times is that, you know, you have to have effective competition. And unfortunately, like especially in our conversations around, prescription drugs and all of that, there is no effective competition.
Right.
The competition is between the hospitals, not between the companies. And that's the difference.
Right. The profits are going to restrict competition, not to make their products better.
Exactly.
Yeah. And just on a brief note, Facebook still has Instagram and WhatsApp up in Russia. You know, a lot of people pulled out. And there was another story that Shell has agreed to buy discounted Russian oil. So there's a boycott going on Twitter with Shell. So check that out. I want to say just really quickly, Florida is closed right now to tourism. I wouldn't come here right now. I did want to say that. I just want to warn and caution people because it's getting to be summertime and you might want to take a trip to Florida. Right now, they're creating policies to discriminate against LGBTIA, women, children, immigrants. The last two bills were an abortion ban and immigrant discrimination bill. So honestly, if you do come here, you're tourism dollars are going to go and fund more policies like this. And it's just something has to stop. And honestly, if I'm going to tell you, if you do come here for a vacation, 4 out of the 10 people that help you, from valets to waitresses to that little person in the Disney costume, they're homeless. They don't have health insurance. They don't have a living wage, and they're still taking care of you. And they're being told your tips will make up for that. So, I mean, go to California. You know what I mean? Go to Texas if you want. I hate
No,
Texas too.
don't even do Texas.
What I'm saying, if you're a conservative looking for a conservative state, this just it isn't it. And if you come here and you are anything other than a white Caucasian cisgendered male, you could face discrimination. And that could happen anywhere, and the state is okay with that. So I want to ask people not to come to Florida, please.
It's really interesting how the party of, less government
Yeah,
supposedly keeps finding ways to create more government.
right.
And that's for me, as somebody who really likes the idea of less government, and this party claiming that that's exactly what they do. They
Hmm.
continuously add in new pieces of government and new enforcement and new government overreach, and it's just
Yeah.
absolutely wild to me.
Oh,
It's
he the courts are gonna argue all of this, and he's just hoping that all gets to the Supreme Court and he's president by the time that happens. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Like, but I was thinking about this "Don't Say Gay" ban, and we were talking about that, and I was like, well, I don't understand who's talking about penises and vaginas at the age of 3.
Up to
No,
third graders.
that's up to third grade, and that includes 9 and 10-year-olds. And to me, that's devastating. That's devastating to somebody that's looking at a world around them and trying to come to terms with themselves in it, and being restricted and getting a buzzer, an electric shock every time they journey towards the word pansexual or non-binary. And that disgusts me. And so don't come
like
here.
it's yeah, that's the
It's
it's
cringe. It's
it's
cringe.
it's high cringe. it's
Yeah.
it's insane, to be perfectly honest, and I don't understand why it is a thing that even needs to come up. I mean,
Yeah.
realistically speaking, it's like, we never addressed sexuality in school. Like, I think even for my kids, I want to say it was like fifth or sixth grade when they finally started talking about, general health and sex and sexuality. And it's like,
Sure.
oh, there are more than one type of attraction out there. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay.
But there's
You
ways
know,
to go from that point forward. Like,
hmm
we I grew up in a different generation than you. I
hmm
I went to a friend's house. His dad had Playboy magazines. That's how I discovered life, right? But we
hmm
all have a different way of discovering that journey. And it might happen with your peers at school, right?
oh
And
God.
that's the thing. When you all start sitting at a lunch table together because you're all relating, then suddenly you're discriminated against. And if you can't address that discrimination, then you can't solve it. And those kids continue to get picked on, you know?
It basically, when it comes to LGBTQIA community, and whether or not, as a straight person, you need to like open your mouth, think of it like Russia and Ukraine. Go the fuck home,
Right.
leave them alone. You don't need to be involved. Period. End
That's
of
right.
story.
That's right.
It's if somebody chooses to involve you in that, it's because they think that you're the kind of person that they could talk to, that you're a safe person to talk to, that you're not
Hmm.
going to, think of them as another. And really, that's all it boils down to. And this is why I can't stress this enough. Everybody go home,
Yeah.
get your nose in your own fucking business. You got
Right.
your own shit to deal with.
Exactly.
Fucking leave other people alone. Like, let them do them, and that's all there is to it.
Hmm.
I'm not a religious person. I'm not showing up to fucking churches to protest.
Right.
I'm not showing up to any of these other things. It's like, it ain't my fucking business, and it ain't
Right.
your fucking business either. And there are times and places where we got to have some common ground. Everybody's a little bit different in what they view as common ground. Me personally, you
Hmm.
know, one of the more recent ones is watching people, cheer on the fact that, the Ukrainian government is handing out fully automatic weapons to its citizens because of an
Right.
invasion. But the same people that are cheering on that refuse to even entertain the idea that, one of us would have a gun, period. And
Right.
that's an issue in and of itself. It's like, is the issue the gun? Is the issue the government? Because if it's the government, let me tell you something about why you'd want to own that gun.
Mm-hmm.
And other things that we've talked about. Realistically speaking, like, yeah, Ukraine is in a unique situation. When it comes to an invasion, yeah, they've got Russia at their doorstep. For us, the only country that is even remotely capable of potentially launching a land war against us would be China, and they're not going to fucking do that.
Right.
They're not going to screw up their status quo for a land war, period.
Mm-mm. No, they're going to wait until Russia is strangled and almost out of oxygen, and then offer them a pittance for a pound. You know,
Exactly.
Russia's going to get raped by China at the end of all this. But think about think those. So there's these kids, and they're discovering things. Like, do your kids understand that non-binary is the base at school now? I think younger kids just assume that everyone else is non-binary until they are something, and there's a freedom to that. You know what I mean? But there's kids being weird about discovering it. And like in Florida, you can't create a social group at school inclusive of the LGBT. So it's very difficult for them to find other people that are also questioning this stuff. And so it's really difficult. And,
Hmm.
Seattle's a little more liberal when it comes to that, which I find so surprising.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely some
Yeah.
more, liberal ideas about it, but what it boils down to is that, I'm the kind of, and this is where I piss everybody off. It's like, look, if there's a group of people who want to pray at school, let them pray at school. If there's a group of
Yeah.
people who want to discuss non-binary and trans politics at school, let them discuss it.
Right.
When it comes to the freedom of exchange of ideas, the more normal your relation with other groups are, the easier it becomes. I know plenty of people who I would consider themselves very conservative and Christian. They have nothing against trans folks at all. In fact, and some of them have friends that are trans, and even some of those friends don't understand, some of the politics that one group or the other has. And it's what it boils down to is that, we've talked about this so many times. People tend to lump, it's like, oh, if you're black, you have to be a Democrat. Never mind
Right.
the fact that there's, this extremely conservative, devout, religious group of black people.
Right.
It's a weird idea that you would have anything like this, or yeah, or the fact that, there would be, LGBTQIA people that are of, very firm in their gun ownership,
Sure.
because owning a gun is a conservative value. It's like, no, like it's meant to protect yourself against any oppressor. And if you feel that your oppressor is the government, what better way to keep yourself from being oppressed than by making sure that you have the ability to ensure your rights? The reason that the Second Amendment, the reason the First Amendment exists and is alive and well is in this country is because the Second Amendment exists.
Sure. Okay.
You have
I
to.
don't think people understand that a Democrat in Florida is closer to a Republican than a Republican in California. You know what I mean? Like, and like, there's Joe Manchin. People would consider him a Republican in any other state, but he is a liberal in his state. And there's all these varying degrees to everything. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's this monolithic behavior because we can't comprehend 7 billion differences. We got to find the similarities. So we're this thing that constantly congeals in combined efforts and then dissipates because we have minute perspectives that go beyond generalizations. Wow, I can't believe I spit that out that well.
Nice. That was a good one.
Nice. So let's see. How about we're gonna get back to a Putin Trump thing. I had a thought. So here's the real question with both of them. And it's basically either they were smart enough to know what they were doing was wrong and a lie, or that they're lying, or they're so stupid that they can't see that they're being manipulated and that what they're doing is wrong. Right. So
Hmm.
either they're stupid or they're evil. And those are the two choices that we're using I don't know, to compare the two. You know what I mean? And on that note, I want to say I feel like we've kind of handed Joe Biden a broom and asked him to clean up a mess, and then we just keep pointing to things and going, "You missed a spot." You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
maybe we could help sweep that up.
Yeah.
Um, so Lindsey Graham said we should kill, someone should kill Vladimir Putin, and
Oh, that was dumb.
it's these things that I wish I woke up in the middle of the night to see Lindsey Graham on Fox News saying we should kill Vladimir Putin. And I wasn't sure if it was a dream or not because I have never in my life watched Fox News. And I was like, well, that's not good. And so I woke up and I was so happy to see that others, not just me, had seen that and said that's not good. Is that not good?
That is not good.
That isn't good, right?
It is not good. For the same reason, that Vladimir Putin trying to assassinate Zelensky is not good. Like it's a war crime. It really is. And
Right.
and that's the thing is that we have, especially as Americans, we have to get used to the idea of we need people to face justice for their crimes and not give them
Right.
the easy way out of just having their brains blown out in a bunker.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
realistically speaking, assassinating a leader, bad decision. In fact, it's kind of what led to World War One. So I'd
It's
rather not. I'd rather not have like the odd world wars start with a world leader assassination. But
right.
unfortunately, that
Republicans were high on the hog of going down into Central and South America, though, and killing leaders, putting in new
oh
ones and giving them a buttload of money to be
well,
nice, you know?
so were the Democrats though.
Right.
So
So we know how killing leaders goes, right?
yeah, we've been pretty good at that, and
Right.
that's a bad decision. It doesn't work the way that you think it does. You end up putting
Right.
in somebody who
Who
grows to
all,
hate you
yeah.
even more than the last group of people did. Whereas if
Yeah.
you would have just like built a working relationship with the people that you weren't necessarily thrilled with, you probably would have had a lot more stability.
Right.
Ugh.
So uh our dependence on Russian oil is 7% of our usage.
Yep.
Um, so that's like, to me, it's like a drug addiction, right? We've
Oh yeah.
acknowledged that we have an addiction and we can go cold turkey or we can try and maintain. I don't
Hmm.
think maintaining works. So what are the options to like alleviate some of this stress, right?
So you have to remember there's a lot of different potentials out there.
Right.
You have a lot of homes that are still fired by natural gas, for example. You have a lot of vehicles that still use oil. The reality is that if you want to remove that dependence on any foreign oil, not just Russia, not just the Saudis, what you have to do is you have to put in the infrastructure and you have to put in the mechanisms for producing and harnessing alternative fuels, and you have to diversify that source, period, end of story.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest issues, like especially is for like people, most average people, is that they've got a car that works just fine, but the idea of going in and having their car, trading in their car for an electric one and having all of that expense is just it's too much for them. Which is
Right.
why I would love to see, more, I'd love to see more companies come up with retrofitting ideas.
Sure.
And I'd love to see GM have a retrofitting say, for example, a retrofitting division where they come up with ways that they can take old cars, remove all of the mechanical components, put in, drop in, the electrical components and convert that way. And then suddenly, voila, you have this electric vehicle that still mechanically sound.
You could just recall all the old cars for retrofitting.
or offer people the ability to finance retrofitting the car. Like, I
Mhm.
love my car, Like, I think it's great, but because it has, a combustion engine, I know that at some point I'm going to have to do a bunch of work to it in order to keep it going. And at some point that engine and transmission are going to give out. Like, that's just
Right.
the reality of having that many mechanical parts. Whereas when you have an electrical engine, you have a lot fewer components. That means that there's a lot fewer things that can go wrong. That means that, you know, instead of having this humongous knowledge of where you're gonna have to go, yeah, sure, it's not going to be like the new Prius where you've got sensors out the ass, but if you're looking for something that's going to get you from point A to point B and be a hell of a lot cheaper to fill up, yeah, your
Yeah.
electric car is going to, that's going to do a hell of a lot for you. And especially like if you're investing in solar and wind, like if you're looking at community options like we've talked about, for example, or even just setting your own house up to be able to supply you with solar, supply your car with solar or wind. Like, there is a great reality in which all of these older models could be upgraded to be electric vehicles. In fact, I saw somebody did an old school Ford F-100 as an electric truck, and I love that classic look of those old vehicles. But it's that, you know it there's the bummer of losing that old engine, because some of those old engines, man, there's just something about them. But at
Oh,
the
yeah.
same time too, the idea that you could take something that is still more than mechanically sound, give it some upgrades, and suddenly you have a 21st century vehicle that looks like something out of the 50s or 60s or 70s. That's fucking great. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. I was I think that's an important message everywhere. I mean, this is just another nudge saying we should go environmental, we should go green. That's
Well,
just it.
and I mean, that's the reality, is that the only chance that you're going to have to then fuck with somebody's economy is if you figure out how to blot out the sun. If you do that, you're going to kill everybody.
Right. But yeah, so but that's more long term. I was thinking kind of short term things like opening up American places, like Biden drastically cut the domestic drilling and stuff. We could open up that. And somebody had mentioned signed the nuclear deal with Iran so we can release their oil. You know what I mean? So in the short term, we just got to get off of the Russian stuff, I think, and then we can get off of the other stuff.
I mean, yeah, and this is where the other problem is the fact that there's an oil cartel to begin with.
Right.
And unfortunately that's not something that we're going to change. Just remember, cartels are not a good thing. Whether it's drugs or oil, it's all bad.
Well, it'll change in the next 50 years, but we're trying to get through the next 4 years with this Russian aggression. And I
Right.
think that, like I said, the sanctions are going to be permanent. We just have to get used to that. Like, we can't go back. We
Hmm.
have to cut them out entirely, and it's better to do it now. And I understand, like, Europe is like 86% reliant on their natural gas and all the other stuff that comes from Russia. We got to stop that.
Right.
We just do not now. It's like something major happened, and we can't suck up to the
This
abuser.
is
You
and
know,
and I would say that this is a great example of why mass public transit is
that was where I
something.
wanted to go when you were talking was, yeah,
uh,
just mass
and that's
autonomous fucking electric that goes everywhere transportation.
and that's like, I mean, we've got it on a very small scale here in Olympia, but
Hmm.
the reality is that if I walk for about 10 minutes, I'll be at a bus stop, and from there, all I got to do is hop on. I don't have to worry about fares. I don't have to do anything like
Right.
that. And to me, that's a fantastic way, like, especially if gas prices get out of control, I'll probably be walking to the bus stop this summer.
Sure. And
And
biking is amazing too.
biking, yeah, get myself some exercise, because God knows I need it. And that's perfectly fine. Like,
Hmm.
there's those are some great things that we can all do in order to make sure that we're gonna
I like
not
this
have.
idea. Ride your bike once a week to save Ukraine. Ride your bike once a week to save Ukraine. I like this.
I mean, absolutely, take the bus to save
Yeah.
Ukraine,
Well, we all have this pent up energy that there's nothing we can do. Go for a bike ride. And when you come
right.
back, you'll be like, I
get
did
your
something. Yeah.
get yourself a nice comfortable bike, and get yourself
Yeah.
out there, right? I mean, that's something that I need to do, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, we all need more exercise, I think. But yeah,
Hmm.
I think that's cool. And I wanted to say Georgia is super pissed, the country. Like they're
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, wow, we can protest. So I'm so happy. I did want to get in the fact that like Georgia is all over that shit, you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
Nope. It's
Mitch,
fantastic.
Mitch McConnell says that plan we talked about last week. By the way, Rick the Rick the Republicans plan to rescue America from all the great they left last time. And Rick says, yes, yes, that is the plan. So even when given the chance, and I tagged Rick every day last week with that episode because it cracked me up. Rick the Republicans plan to rescue America. One of my greatest titles, you know what I mean? And he says, yeah, he's doubling down. He's like, I want to tax seniors. I want to tax people on disability. I want to tax everybody. I want to shut down Medicare. I want to shut down Medicaid. I want to get rid of Social Security. I want to cut the budget and get rid of everything that is welfare. So that's interesting.
He, yeah,
We do,
McConnell wasn't exactly very thrilled with Rick Scott over that one.
yeah. I just think right now we have Republicans that are happy to be senators, and we have Republicans that want to be president. And right now, the people that are trying to jockey for position as president are really destroying everything going on now. You know, it makes it so hard for Republicans to be normal when there's a Rick Scott or a Marco Rubio shouting about crack pipes or
Hmm.
elders not paying their fair share. You know what I mean?
Right.
Shit. Okay. Let's see. I already did that, right? Yeah, okay, good. So there is an issue, dude, that I never even thought of when it comes to Ukraine.
Mm.
So there's people, refugees, they're fleeing Ukraine. Some
Hmm.
of them are non-binary, some of them are transgender, and there's transgender people that are having a real difficult time crossing because their passport doesn't match their sexual
Hmm.
uh presentation, you
Right.
know. And I never even thought about that. When I think about this, I think about people fleeing in Poland going, get in here, you know. I never think of them like stopping African students and saying, oh, you're black, no, this is going to take longer, just get them in the country, right? And I didn't want to complain about Poland at the top of the show because they're, I mean, what, 1.2 million people, and we've heard about two like stories. So they're
Mhm.
doing a fantastic job. But wow, I never thought about transgender folks.
Oh, and I think that's one of those things where it's like we don't tend to think about how difficult it is for
Yeah,
anybody to cross the border. Number one, let alone anybody who has you know it presents very differently from what is on their paperwork.
right,
And that's an issue here in America even. But imagine having to flee to
yeah,
another country
right,
with paperwork that says one thing and people looking at who's in front of them and going, this doesn't match up.
right. Not get in here. We'll worry about it later, right?
Right.
Turn around, go back. I don't, that one just
and
doesn't,
that's and I think that's why, like, a lot of countries have started to change their passport system to allow for a quote unquote third gender option, and allow people to update their information, so that way it makes their paperwork and their presentation match up. and
right.
so and so like that's one of those things that's a great thing, but there's still a lot of countries that have yet to get that far. And
Mm-hmm.
so, whether it's, people going on vacation, whether it's people that are, having to flee an active war zone, it's something that has to be taken into consideration.
Right.
And, oftentimes, this is especially something that I kind of studied. It's not in terms of necessarily world politics, but just in terms of, like data and usage. We often don't we think about our point of view when we're designing something, and when we go and test something, that's when we find out that from somebody else's point of view that something that we designed isn't exactly correct.
Right.
And it's called inclusive design. And so you start to see different interpretations, different presentations. Your word choice doesn't necessarily hit the mark, but by updating your word choice, everybody's like, oh yeah, no, that all makes sense across the board.
Right.
And
Other. Just
you
other.
know and that's the thing, is like, nobody wants to just be called other. That's the
I do.
reality of it. But
I think that's the only way that we can increase these policies is by marking other every chance we get.
just human, period.
Human, yeah, human. I like that. I mean, it doesn't matter if I'm
Right.
a male or a female when I'm getting on a plane or crossing a border. I've always said, unless it's between me and my doctor, nobody else needs to know what's in my pants. That's how I feel about it. Like when
Yeah,
I
it's
applied for apartments, I put other. What race are you? Other. What gender are you? Other. Like the podcast, my emails, non-binary, because that's what I believe. I don't believe that we should be tagging ourselves that way.
exactly, if somebody wants to tag themselves that way, great. If somebody doesn't want to tag themselves that way, great. To me, it's a matter of, you know, it shouldn't matter how a person tags themselves. In fact, I would argue that in a lot of cases it shouldn't just be collected, period, end of story.
Yep, me too. Okay.
And so, it's not necessarily just that, you have this third option. It's, something that just shouldn't be collected. And
Right,
it boils down to, it's the government's job to make sure that, the person presenting themselves matches up with the paperwork that's given to them. And if the
right,
government confirms it, then who the hell cares?
exactly. Okay. I just don't.
Whether
I
or not a
don't.
government will confirm that is now a different, it's a whole
I think it'll
topic of
change.
conversation.
Like
Oh, it
Washington
will.
State was one of the first states to actually offer the non-binary designation on their driver's license,
Mhm.
and California started going with that. I like it. I don't. I hope it doesn't diminish the non-binary advocacy by advocating that everyone should just be non-binary. Like in
Mhm.
public, you should just be non-binary. You know what I mean? To me
Mhm.
personally, that's how I look at it. It's an easier way. The same as, you know, he, she, we're all they. Like the default should be they. If you don't know or you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, it's all right to call a male presenting person they. You know what I mean? It's okay to call a cisgendered male they. It's fine. It's not going to hurt their feelings. But if you actually get somebody that prefers they, they're going to like that. So get used to it. You know what I mean?
I mean, even like, for example, in German, when you use formal, it's very neutral.
I like
Formal is
that.
very neutral language, and
Mm-hmm.
even in German, there's been a real shift towards, marking things as more neutral, and I think that's fantastic.
Sure.
You know, in a lot of cases, like especially in English, like, most of our descriptors are neutral. A and the, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right
know,
now, I think it's Norway, somewhere in the Netherlands. Their grade schools, they just call people hens. They're all hens. They're not boys, they're not girls, they're just hens that can play together. And I like that.
so to me, it's one of those things where there's so much to learn,
Hmm.
but if you make it a point to exclude people, don't be surprised when they're pissed off.
Right. And don't go out of your way to exclude people. So it's Women's History Month, Jeffrey. Isn't that exciting?
It
Just for
is.
the record, I wanted to announce it for the month. My pronouns will be she and her because I'm in solidarity with women. I, we always go back to the old timey women when we're like, ooh, who should we just talk about for Women's History Month? And I purposely didn't think of any. I didn't research any. I didn't look for any special women to promote because I think they all should be promoted. Is there any woman living doing something right now that you can think of off the top of your head? I'm doing the same thing, by the way. I purposely didn't put anything in the note because I wanted to know just randomly what women are inspiring to us just off the top of our heads without them trying to do it for a month.
And I think this is one of those things where it's really tough in that, um there's so many out there that, we have there's so many women out there that we have to be proud of, and so many women that have done so many cool
Totally.
things. And it's not even just about recognizing the ones that are doing what they're doing now. It's about recognizing the ones that have done some amazing stuff in the past. I mean, you
Mhm.
look at, like currently you've got, the woman who developed the thorium reactor. I think that's fantastic. You have
Right.
you have the woman who helped develop the mRNA vaccines. I think that's amazing.
Right.
But then you have things like we don't even necessarily think about, that we kind of take for granted, like Hedy Lamarr, for example, where she is the creator of modern Bluetooth technology and frequency hopping. you
I
know
did not know that.
beauty and brains. Oh, she was a genius. That
Hedy,
was how
Hedy,
we
Isn't that the name of the mayor or governor in Blazing Saddles?
Um,
Hedy Lamarr. What the fuck? Yeah, it is.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. Wow, that's so interesting. Sorry, not to get you off the tangent because I really liked where that was going. I just assumed Bluetooth came from alien spaceships, just like Velcro and titanium aluminum or whatever.
Yeah. So I mean, it's absolutely incredible when you think about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hedy Lamarr, born Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler. She's from Austria. She was Austrian born.
that's awesome.
Yep. So it's quite incredible when you think about it.
Hmm.
The fact that she basically, the reason why we were able to have our nice little Bluetooth earbuds that we listen to, it's her. She's the reason why. She invented this frequency hopping technology that kept the Germans from jamming our radio signals.
Wow, I did not know that. I'm gonna have to put that in a note and talk more about that because that's cool.
Oh, it's Hedley Lamar. That's Blazing Saddles. And the
Hadley,
joke
thank
was they
you.
kept calling him Hedy Lamar.
Right. Okay, that's cool.
That's now that I remember it. I was like, wait a minute, I know that it's not that. Oh, it's
Yeah,
Hedley.
right. I got the idea because I listened to this podcast called Hysteria, and it's a female-based podcast. And I thought to
Hmm.
myself, nobody's promoting like Alyssa Mastromonaco, who actually worked in the Obama White House, right? And she was just amazing. And she's on the podcast, and she's just one of those humans that's super nice and super sweet, but very direct in her advocacy. And I like people like that. And I like Ilhan Omar. She takes a lot of grief and she has a lot of stands that I agree with, but she just wants to jump to the finished product and say, let's pass it and forget about it. But
Hmm.
I want discussion on reform. I don't want a bunch of people that don't talk to people reforming something without getting my input first. So that's how
And
that goes.
I would also shout out Liz Cheney. I don't necessarily agree with all of her
Yeah,
politics, but the fact of the matter is that, she's facing a very hostile party that has, essentially changed into something that, I would argue shouldn't be called Republican anymore.
right,
And she is having to face, she's facing down any number of issues because, she refuses to stand in line. I mean, Adam Kinzinger has gotten some flack, but he hasn't gotten nearly the amount of flack as Liz Cheney has.
right. They attacked her. They're
Oh,
attacking
absolutely.
her right now. Yeah, it's a great one. I don't, yeah, I
Don't
don't,
agree. I don't agree with
mm-mm,
her. And
no.
realistically, I think she was one of the House reps that voted most in line with Trump. Let's be real
Yeah,
honest.
she voted
Like,
against the American Rescue Plan, Build Back Better, all of that stuff. She voted against that stuff.
mhm. And I mean, she pretty much toes the line of what you would expect a Republican to, a past Republican to toe the line with.
That's
But the
fine.
reality is that, she saw the same issue with Trump that a lot of people who were conservative had with Trump, and that's what led them to vote for Biden. You
Right.
know, it wasn't that Trump, didn't have conservative policies. It was that Trump was a power hungry maniac, and he was going to do whatever he could to keep that power. And
Trump
that's
had no policies. People around him had conservative policies.
yeah. I mean, there's that too. So,
I don't think he had any policy other than filling his own pocket. And nothing
oh,
makes me laugh more than part of the wall falling down. You made me so happy this whole week. I just kept thinking about, the wall falling down. So thank you for that. I like it. I'm going to stick with Liz Cheney. I like that one. We should
you,
support her.
it's. I mean, I support her through the investigation. I don't necessarily support policies, and that's perfectly fine. John McCain always said that, reasonable people can have reasonable disagreements. You
That's
attack the
right.
method and not the man. and
Right.
and this is, very much the case. I guarantee you that there are people out there that I'm going to have disagreements with simply
Hmm.
because I don't agree with their policy. I don't agree with the way that they're trying to get there. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that I value them any less.
Yeah. I
And
mean, that's why I attacked Marco Rubio the way I did. It wasn't because I hate him, it's because I wanted him to be a better Republican. You know what I mean? And then on the news one day, I heard, well, the Democrats and Marco Rubio are in agreement. And I was like, did I do something? You know
What the
which
fuck?
part of what I said to him like got through to him? You
Yeah,
know?
right. And that's just it, is that, there are places where we can agree,
Hmm.
and those have to be fleshed out, period, end of story.
But how do we find where we disagree? And there's a solution to it if we're just automatically solidified at a bulkhead against each other, you know?
Well, that's the problem with current politics, is that
Right.
we might agree on the end goal, but because we don't do my version or your version, we just aren't going to do any version, and that's just dumb.
Right. Yeah, it's a stalemate. And that's where we were on abortion and guns. Democrats were like, we won't go after your guns. You don't go after abortion. And then they went against abortion. So now it's going against guns. And now there's a new battle. Please donate. I'm getting, hey, will you help me? Will you donate? No, I won't donate. Sorry. We don't
No,
believe in donating. I'll donate my time and effort, you know? Sorry, Nikki Fried. I really like you. She is the agriculture commissioner that has won statewide going against Ron DeSantis, and you will find us promoting her and Val Demings on Twitter, but I'm not going to give anybody money. Sorry, I can't afford it, you know? Oh man. All right. I think in the next hour we're going to talk about our lizard people mentality because the Republicans are onto us. We are lizard people and we have to eat babies to maintain this luscious skin, but I think there's a misconception that we can eat minority babies, but we can't. We'll just turn brown then. So we need, rich entitled babies to feed on, white babies. I don't know.
Jesus Christ.
I'm just stalling. I'm just stalling at the end of the show. I'm sorry, having a good
You
time.
gotta, I mean,
It's a teaser. It's a
Jesus.
teaser.
Next on eating babies on live stream. No, yeah, that's what the fuck. No, it's one of those. That's. I
Yeah,
love I love a good conspiracy theory. That's the thing, is I love a good one.
mm,
This isn't even good. That one's
right.
not even good.
No, oh, just it makes me laugh.
Like
So,
my favorite conspiracy theory, like especially like kind of going back
yeah, what is your favorite
since
conspiracy theory?
my favorite conspiracy theory was MK Ultra. That one was
Um,
fucking wild.
What's that? Why don't I
So,
remember that?
well, that was probably because you were part of MK Ultra. No, so MK Ultra. So there was this conspiracy theory that went around for a long time that the American government was working on mind control.
Oh,
Turns
yeah, yeah,
out,
yeah, yeah.
turns out we were using things like LSD and and other things like psilocybin. We were trying to mix chemicals in order to figure out, like, if we could tamper with somebody's water supply, could we essentially cause chaos and panic and control people.
Right.
It
Right.
turns out it turns out that if you just send somebody on a bad trip, that's not mind control. And so all of that work that they did, there was this whole list of issues that the government was trying to do that. And then when the paperwork for MK Ultra comes out, we find out, oh yeah, we really did that, and that one was fucked up. Or the whole, your government is spying on you. Oh, our government would never do that. Then we find out from Edward Snowden about Prism and how they really were just spying on ordinary Americans.
There's stinger technology in every city and on the border. It's being used against immigrants too. And that just it collects all the data and information that goes to any cell tower. It just collects it. That's what happens in Tallahassee. They have stinger technology. Yeah, you're being recorded and watched all the time.
Hmm.
Let's see. So my favorite was actually the Space Force thing, right?
Oh
Like
my God.
people believe that there's a mission to Mars. And it dawned on me, we have an atmosphere because we have a core that rotates, creating a magnetic field
Hmm.
that allows protection from the solar flares, right? Something that Mars does not have.
Right.
So even if we go and terraform and create the polar ice caps to drip down on the planet and create this new atmosphere, the first temporary or small solar flare that comes along is going to rip it apart. We're never going to be able to populate Mars. And I think that's so funny. Like nobody thinks about that. Like, is it really Jason? Like, is Elon Musk planning to go to Mars based on the fact that we might be able to terraform the planet into a usable place? No, he's not. I'm not smarter than Elon Musk, right?
Well, I think that there's like I think one of the issues there is that like Mars makes sense in terms of having like the ability to planet hop. It doesn't necessarily make sense in terms of the ability to settle.
Right.
Simply because like I mean, if we could, you're essentially going to have to build systems that are going to generate oxygen, that are going to
Mhm.
supply fresh water, that are going to do a number of things, and I just don't know that that's feasible.
That's on your way to the asteroid field, the asteroid belt. That's not
Right.
populating Mars. It's building industrial complexes on Mars.
And that's the thing is like I think that there is actually some viability in doing that, but it's one of those things where the real answer is going to be deep space mining, aka mining the asteroid belt and
Yep.
being
Yep.
able
Yep.
to get the raw materials from there. And it's just, Mars is going to be a jumping off spot before you get to the next one until you can figure out how to create self-contained systems that are going to capture enough moisture and capture moisture from, you know, glaciers and asteroids in the asteroid belt. That's really what it boils down to.
I love it. All right. Those are our conspiracies. Thanks for listening to Public Access America. My name is Jason. His name is Jeffrey, and we will be back right after this song. And we're back. See, that's how easy it is. It's so hard to find that split in the edit. You know what I mean? Like,
Boom.
so what I do, I don't know if anybody else notices, but I create chapter lists based on our conversation. So after this, I go back and every time we change subjects, I create a witty comment about the
Mhm.
change and then maybe another witty comment about where it ended before we switch to another comment. And you
Yep.
can find our discussion about Russia and Ukraine on YouTube, by the way, with chapters, and it automatically creates chapters so you can just click through and enjoy that, which is kind of cool. And yeah, what did you think of the State of the Union? We're gonna breeze past that really quick because that's like 2 weeks old by now. But
The State of the Union address, basically my thought on the matter was it happened and there were some salient points, and then it turned into the cheerleader conference that it normally is.
hmm,
And, it's one of my biggest problems with the State of the Union address is that there is no president who's going to step up on that podium and be like, yo, shit's fucked.
right.
Why? Because the moment that any president does that, our markets tank, guaranteed.
Oh,
And
sure.
so, like, COVID was a shit's fucked situation. The war with, between Russia and Ukraine, shit's fucked. And the State of the Union is precarious. Like that's the real answer. You
Sure.
have you have one set of states that are looking to strip people of their rights. You have another set of states that are looking for absolute government control,
Agree.
and it's just all over the place. It's the State of the Union is like, yeah, we're still here. That's pretty much where I put it.
Yeah, I've avoided this statement because I don't want to insult you in any way, but states' rights is really taking a hit as a theory. You know what I mean? Like
That's
it's not going real well right now.
well, and that's yeah, and that's always the problem with any type of rights. It doesn't matter if it's
Power,
states'
right,
rights. It doesn't matter if you're looking at rights between different countries.
right. Somebody's always trying to get the advantage.
Well,
That's right.
somebody's always trying to interject their own personal politics into it, and that's
Mm,
and that's the problem is that when it comes to partisanship, somebody always tries to interject their own personal feelings or beliefs or
yeah,
religions or lack of or whatever.
to hurt their opponent, which hurts all of us at the same time.
Right. And
Mm.
so, it doesn't surprise me that when you have people who see themselves as, these devout Christians that are going to, uphold the religious rule of law, and it's like, oh, fuck off.
Oh my God, Jeffrey, I saw a TikTok and I thought of you instantly, and you're gonna wonder why. It was a girl in front of a Trump 2024 flag, and the headline under it said "Fuck your feelings." And it immediately made me think of, wow, these snowflakes just don't understand their own hypocrisy. So
Mhm.
Biden announced ARPA, And I only remember that because of DARPA. DARPA
Mhm.
is what creates military advantages for us, and ARPA is going to be a medical version of that. And I was wondering what was going to happen to Operation Warp Speed now. Like, could we keep funding that and then aim that directly at illnesses and solve them?
Operate,
It,
like any operation, um, operations are meant to be a timeline based or a goal based target.
right.
And so, like for example, to give you some great examples of what happens when you extend an operation, you either
Oh,
look like Vietnam, or you look like
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan and Iraq, or you look like Ukraine.
Yeah, I got you.
The thing is that, if you're going to have a program that's meant for strategic, health and medical needs based
Hmm.
on pandemics, or what may have you.
Well, ARPA is going to be Alzheimer's, cancer, and diabetes. Curing those three in the next 50 years.
And to me, like, to me, what that looks like, or what that means is that, you need to have a program that is going to be flexible enough that you can define what they're going to be taking on, but you're
Right,
not going but it's not going to be something that once it meets its goal, that's the end of it.
right.
Like, so for example, I think cancer, I think, diabetes, I think, Alzheimer's,
Alzheimer's,
those are great.
dementia. Right,
Those are great targets, and I think that those are absolutely fantastic. But I think this is one of those programs where it's like, you know this would be one where, once, like for example, we would look at what to prioritize in any given year, or any given, presidential term, for example.
right.
And so, like, for right now, the primary focus has been COVID. And once we move off of that, it's like, okay, well, what can we work on next?
That's what I want to know. What can we hyper focus this on? Like, I have macular degeneration, right? I'm in remission, but boom, let's cure Stargard's. Let's cure arthritis. Let's point and focus this entire resource that we did to fix COVID and say, let's try and fix something so tiny.
And I think this is one of those things where there has, as long as there's a fundamental shift in how we treat and deal with health, that
Yeah.
this will be an absolutely fantastic thing. So for example, we talk a lot about preventative maintenance. Okay, well, there's only so much you can do to prevent cancer. There's only so much you can
Right.
do to prevent Alzheimer's, or diabetes, for example. But how do you actually treat it? How do you actually get to the point where you can take on the disease? Thanks to all of the funding that got put in place to fight COVID, you've got a bunch of organizations who are taking on a bunch of different diseases that affect, a lot of the US population. You've got,
I
they're
agree.
they're working on Lyme disease, they're working on,
Oh, sure. Breast cancer, prostate cancer, they're all over the place.
leukemia, HIV, herpes, for example. I know that's one that they're working on. And
Yeah.
to me, it's absolutely fantastic. Like, being able to take some of these viruses that we have never been able to, really,
Hepatitis? Right.
yeah, some of these viruses that we've never been able to really fight,
Right.
and give us a chance to actually fight them. It's
Right.
great. Or cancer, for example, figuring out how, we can train the immune system to notice, a change in cells to go after, and fight
Yeah.
specific diseases. It's absolutely
Starving them of
fantastic.
oxygen? That's such a great idea. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
but I was wondering, like, should warp speed die or should it just become something like ARPA or be folded into ARPA where there's something that just spends the resources on one easy, like, what we're talking about, these are three of the major things that people suffer from, right? But
Mhm.
what if we went to the other end? What if we clicked the list and went to the disease that's only affecting 10 people a year and knocked it out? And then went up the ladder as people are going down. What if we had a something that just took care of the low hanging fruit that we could solve?
Well, that's the question: is it really low hanging fruit? And I think that's one of the things you have to actually think about.
It is
You
for
know,
some, for people suffering like Devi and their condition to the my friend Luna, who suffers from other things, and Katie, who suffers from smell disorders. It's serious to them, but it could
It's
be
well,
low hanging fruit to other people, you know?
it's well, and that's the thing is that what you're relying on is that because there's so few numbers that it's low hanging fruit. And the reality is that if you have zero knowledge of
Oh,
what's
yeah,
causing the
yeah,
system, you're 10 years out of trying to figure out where
that's a
you're
good
going to
point.
find that. And
How are you
so
going to study it if there's only 10 people with it?
exactly. And that's the thing is it's not like say COVID where we had you have this
Right.
base foundation of disease and then you get a variant. It's like, okay,
Right.
99% of what we know is going to carry over. Whereas in some of these other cases, we might not know anything about it whatsoever.
Mm,
And so trying to figure out and find out how we're going to fight and treat that, it's like, I get it. There might only be 10 people that have this disease, but if you have
yeah,
absolutely zero knowledge of what causes it or how, that's a lot of unknowns in order to dump a bunch of funding in to try and find out
that's a good
something.
point.
Whereas, with some of these other things like cancer, like Alzheimer's, like any number of other things, we have a lot of base knowledge already. We're probably like 60 to 80% of the way there,
Yeah.
but by that additional funding, we're able to knock out a huge chunk of needs and and
Ooh,
and
I like
get a
that.
bunch of knowledge in order to take that out.
Top
And
off the research so people can move on to these other things. I like
and
that.
exactly, and that's where, when you look at where the money is going, if
Mm,
you have a bunch of money that's going towards cancer treatment, cancer research, and cancer this and cancer that, and cancer,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you finally figure out how to beat cancer, all of that money that's already being dumped into cancer from all of these other places will
Mm-hmm.
be able to be shifted to other priorities, period, end of story.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas if you shift a bunch of money towards something that we have nothing, we're still dealing with cancer or Alzheimer's or any number of diseases that we
Mm,
do know a lot about already. And so it's I like the idea, but unless it was something like, oh, hey, this is a bacteria that's causing that, we can figure out how to fight a bacteria. Boom. But
right.
like genetic disorders are always really tough to figure out, you know,
But we're on a new prophecies for that with this mNRA possibilities, and I like that.
potentially.
Like
Yeah.
sickle cell is almost a thing of the past thanks to DNA replacement therapy. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? That's
And
so
that's
cool.
and that's just, as the technology expands and as the
Hmm.
technology improves, there's going to be a lot of these things that we're going to be able to take on and
Yeah.
potentially, either lessen or cure. And that's fantastic, but it's still, 15-20 years out.
Some of them are right here, right? Like
Some of them, like
there's
HIV
the
is in its first round tests.
but the protein that, like, the HIV suitcase actually fits a protein that will eat the protein that fills the brain and causes dementia or Alzheimer's. Like, these are right around the corner. I think that's really
Hmm.
exciting. So I kind of like the idea. I like the idea of having, instead of investing militarily like that, like we were talking about, if we're at peace, we don't need this military budget. If we could move that into medical research, because I think America is a research powerhouse. I think that's what we should be known for, advancements in everything. That's what we are. We're a collection of the best and brightest. We have the best and brightest schools. We should work with our allies around the world to bring them here and create things like that. So I like
I
ARPA.
don't I don't disagree with that. And it's absolutely fantastic that
Yeah.
you've had this level of funding and you've had this ability to dig into some of these major problems. Like, I'm stoked
Right.
for the fact that you know we've cured what, the fourth person of HIV, and we're testing a vaccine to see how
Mm-hmm.
that's going to, like, that in and of itself is fantastic.
Yeah.
And especially like if what we can end up doing is do something like monoclonal antibodies, like what we did for coronavirus, but create
Right.
monoclonal antibodies that then fight HIV. That would in and of itself would be wild and fantastic.
Right. I think that's so cool that we're doing that. And what we're not doing is we're not stealing the scientists like we used to. All of our advancements were from Russian scientists or German scientists, right? So I
Right.
think we got to reach out right now to Russian scientists and say, "Hey, some of the some
Some
of
of
the
the
best,
breast.
some of the best and brightest minds in Russia developing technologies under fear of oppression and death. Come here, live in democracy. You can create some amazing things that'll benefit the world, and it won't be used for evil.
Can
You know
we
what I mean?
can we just say that when they finally come up with the breast cancer vaccine, can the slogan be "It's the tits"?
It's the tits. Shit's the tits.
It's the tits. The breast cancer vaccine. It's the tits.
Right. I just think that we're all fighting for funding. Like the breast
Mhm.
cancer people, the prostate cancer people, the lung cancer people, St. Jude's. Like we're all fighting for funding, and that kind of sucks. It kind of splits all of the funding. All these people want to donate. I want to donate to St.
Mhm.
Jude's because they helped me, but I don't donate to, I don't even know, Susan G. Komen. Wow, I got that one, and it's like, let's just focus. Let's just focus that ray on solutions. All right.
And I think that's where we have a fantastic ability to, like our base understanding of cancer is improving. And
Yeah.
as we learn, like, how these different cancers work, it's going to be one of those things where it's like,
Boom,
90%
boom,
we'll have
boom.
90% of the knowledge, and then it's just the additional 10% for figuring out each
Yeah.
of these different, variants of cancer, essentially.
And it'll come down to a vaccine. Yep.
Exactly. And that's what it boils down to, is that, you know, because of the investment in technology, you're going to see a technological leap forward
Yeah.
in treating a lot of this stuff. And what might have taken us another 10 or 15 years might only take us 5 now, just
Right.
because we've had that great technological leap forward. And once our time is done with having to fuck around with COVID, you're going to have a lot more space in order
Mm-hmm.
to take on some of this stuff. This one
Yeah.
was one of those ones where it got a lot of people sick. It fucked over our hospitals. It killed a
Yeah.
lot of people, and we had to address it now. Now it's time to move on to what now we're getting close to the point where we can move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, there was bubonic plague that took out millions, there was the Spanish flu that took out millions. History will see COVID as that, as just that destruction of life. It's like a balancing of life that happens, and I hate it. Every 100 years, millions of people are going to die. So get ready, 3,000.
Every No, more like
Um,
2100.
21. Yeah. Okay.
It's every
Yeah.
100 years.
Every 100.
Because
I'm
so
I'm bad at math.
I don't know what we had. Smallpox. Well, we had polio, and polio didn't really
Right.
kill a whole lot of people, but it
Mm-mm.
really did. Smallpox was pretty fucking gnarly. Smallpox, that
Yeah.
one royally got people. And
And I was
then the
just
bubonic
watching.
plague had, like 3 different waves that went through
Yeah.
Europe.
But that decimated Romania. So when you were talking about Romania in the last episode, I was like, oh man, because yeah, and that just sprung up their witches. Now Romania is full of witches trying to defend themselves from a plague that's been gone for 100 years. Fucking Romania. I want to go there so bad.
Romania would be a wild trip.
Yeah.
I really just want to spend like 3 months in Europe and go visit
Yeah.
all of these places.
Fuck
Dreams.
yeah. So Biden did bring up something that was important to me, and it was the 23 million Americans that are in treatment right now for drug abuse, and
Hmm.
how he wants to help that and acknowledge that because he believes in it. He believes in substance abuse prevention, unlike
Easy,
Marco Rubio, who wants to get rid of funding for
easy,
it.
easy, 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 easy,
Yeah, that
easy.
was a slam dunk, right? But these are the four things he thinks he can work on a bipartisan
Number
basis.
one, legalize marijuana. Period. End of
Oh,
story. Like,
legalize it.
there's already data from states that have legalized it that opioid usage has decreased significantly.
Right.
Period. End of
Boom.
story.
Just do
It's
it.
like yeah, they're, allow the research to take place so that way they can figure out how to breed out the stuff that eats holes in your brain.
Right.
Period. Like
Of course.
that'll the answer to a problem, yeah, sure, it creates it's a different problem, but it's a lot less severe problem. Number one. And number two, you let the science take place, that problem will get fixed too. Period. End of
Right.
story.
Boom.
It's, like anything else, smoking a bunch of shit is not necessarily a great thing for you. It never has been, it never will be. But when you're looking at smoking weed versus fucking fentanyl, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry.
Oh yeah. And what weed has done for oh my gosh, brain disorders is
Hmm.
amazing. My
CBD has
friend,
done a lot
his
of things.
daughter had 286 seizures a day, and she's down to like one or two a month. And that's a toddler that's
Hmm.
been given marijuana therapies. I'm not quite sure how they give it to her, but
So it's a CBD therapy, I think is what it
that's
is.
just, it's incredible to think that that's
People who
Tori. I
have
love
people
Tori.
who have people who've had things like, oh, it's I
It
want to
helps
say it's
with epilepsy,
Parkinson's.
right?
I want to say it's Parkinson's, but I don't think it's Parkinson's. But basically, like a shaking
Cerebral
disorder.
palsy,
Yeah,
epilepsy. Yeah, these
people
things.
that people that are using it for CBD, they've found that they're not having issues. I mean, besides the pain management stuff, I mean, pain management, the that side of it is fantastic. And I can,
Agreed.
whether you're using rubs or whether you're using edibles, like it works. Period. In a story. You know,
Hmm.
does that mean that it's as effective as it could be? No, but let me tell you something. It's a lot more effective than me eating fucking 5 ibuprofen a night. Uh,
Yeah. You want to know
and
what causes constipation? 5 ibuprofen a night.
you want to know what fucking destroys your kidneys and liver? Five
Yeah.
ibuprofen a night. And at
Right.
my worst, I was taking like 5 ibuprofen like 3 or 4 times a day. Jesus fucking
Wow.
Christ. And
You were
now
causing
maybe
more pain than you were in, you know?
not really, because I was in a
No,
lot of pain.
but it wasn't working. The ibuprofen wasn't working.
Well, it was working, but it was also doing damage to shit. So
Yeah.
that's one of those things where it's like the trade-off is like, yeah, do I have to use CBD? Yeah. But does that mean that I'm not destroying my kidney or my liver? Also, yeah.
Yeah. He also brought up mental health, that
Hmm.
he wants to expand on mental health. And I keep thinking to myself, and this is in the realm of police officers, we're going to ask a bunch of people to en masse become something that they're not all qualified to do, you know? And like, so we're going to get a range of therapists, but we're not creating new therapists, right? In
Hmm.
masses like they were calling on. For 4 years, it's been take care of your mental health. Well, who are you going to turn to? That person that's overstaffed or overbooked? You know what I mean? The person that doesn't have time for you because we don't have enough therapists. And the other thing is those apps that are jumping on the online therapy thing for a price. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know the name of you, but if you're charging people, then you are not a resource for everybody because there's people that can't afford it. And if you don't have a sliding scale on the price ranges, then yeah, you're not helping anybody. You're just helping people with the means to get the help. So that
Yep.
bugs me. I'd like to see an app that could somebody in jail or somebody that's homeless or somebody that's institutionalized in another manner for other indignities could reach
Hmm.
out and find like, because even if you're institutionalized and you have access to random therapy, you don't have a second opinion like everybody says you should always get. And so
Right.
I wish there was an independent an ability for everyone to just get that verification or knowledge or information. But we
Well,
don't have therapists en masse to do that,
well,
you know?
what it boils down to is that becoming a therapist is an expensive venture, number
Of
one.
course, yeah.
And then once you are a therapist, like any other number of doctors, being licensed is expensive.
Right.
And so,
And the
what
paperwork is overwhelming.
so once again, you have to try and create vectors and mechanisms to either attract people to come into the country to do those things, which
Right.
poses a problem in and of itself. Language barriers, especially when it comes to mental health, is always tough.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's ineffective. I mean, therapy is therapy if they are all learn the same thing. It's just, trying to make sure that you're communicating with the person that you're trying to communicate with and doing so effectively.
If you're comfortable with them, right?
I don't care who my therapist is, as long as I can, as long as we're able to work together, then perfect. That's all you need.
That's right. That's right. But I'll tell you, I lean towards females. I'm not going to tell my problems to another man. Like to me, I don't like it. Men to me are dismissive of other men. Like, suck it up, you're a man. You know what I mean? So I prefer women because women are more nurturing and they tell me what to do and then I listen. Whereas if a man tells me what to do, I'm going to be like, who the fuck are you? So, but that's me
Me, like,
personally.
I've had great male doctors, I've had great female doctors. You know, um, I will say that I've had more luck with women doctors than I've had with male doctors. Um, but that's not to say that I haven't had quality from both. And really, it's,
Sure.
you know, I'm also one of those people, where it's like, well, if I can't choose, as long as whoever I'm getting is good, I don't really care.
So you can join like a group and just see the next person on the list.
Yeah. So,
I can
so
do that
from,
too.
so, to me, it's one of those things where, I try to make it a point where it's like, if, you know, like I will pick somebody, and if they work out, great. If they don't, well, I'll find somebody else. If it
That-
happens to be a dude, great. If it happens to be a chick, great. If it happened to be somebody who is trans, also great. I don't give a shit. As
oh, I
long
don't
as I
care. Yeah,
as
no.
long as the person that I'm going to sit down and work with is able to help me, and I can build a bond with them in order to work on my issues.
Part of my realization that everybody is everybody. I had heart palpitations and I had to go to the emergency room, right? And they were going to give me an EKG, and this girl was helping me, and I was just like in and out of it. But I opened my eyes and it was this beautiful, just transgender person, Star. And there was earrings, and that just amazing. And I just looked up and I was like, thank you. You're so beautiful to me, and we were good friends after that. Actually, we talked,
Hmm.
we texted, because I did the, they said they had gotten so much hatred that that patients have actually requested to not be seen by them. And it made me feel so good that my instinct, my initial thought was, oh, thank you, and not, oh
I think
no,
that's I think it's fantastic if
yeah.
someone like Star is number one,
Yes.
brave enough to go into that field. Number two,
Yes.
keeps themselves going in that field despite the amount of discomfort and hatred that is going to be directed towards them.
Yeah.
Like, shout out to you, Star.
We're a new generation of people advocating for rights that never were advocated for before. Like there's always been transgender people. It's just they've had the resources to do something about that.
Hmm.
And like they've been in the shadows. The same with disabled people. I keep telling people, like 40 years ago, we were in institutions, we were shipped away. So we're the first generation to speak on these things, and we're not all going to get it right all the time,
Well, and
but
like,
I love the fact that there's so many people trying, so many people
oh,
that are so
absolutely.
nervously saying they like, they
Right.
want to get it right. And I love that. I love that.
And that's the thing is like, I don't give a shit who the person is that's treating me, as long as they're,
Yeah.
a board certified doctor or nurse or whatever have you. If
Right.
they're certified, then who the fuck cares? It's not my business. My only concern is whether or not I can build a connection with someone
Hmm.
who's treating me in any way, shape,
Right.
or form. It's like, I've had nurses that, I've had, cis women nurses who've just been straight dismissive of me.
Right.
I've had cis male that have been straight dismissive of me. I don't really care. Is If I've got somebody who's listening to me and they're working with me to find a solution,
Right.
I don't care who they are. That's and especially if they're certified. I like, what am I going to do? No, say no, you're not certified, despite the fact that they're there they are. You can
Yeah.
look them up.
They're not going to wipe transgender on your arm when they're drawing blood. You know
But,
what
but
I mean?
what if I catch the gay?
Well,
No,
then you're lucky and you'll have a new perspective on life. You know what I mean? Like
it's the
what I looked up at, what I instantly saw was I felt like I was struggling, and I looked up and saw somebody that I knew struggled. Like that before we even talked, the first thing I looked up with and I saw Star, and I was like, oh, you haven't had it easy either. And that put me at ease that I wasn't being judged for
Mhm.
my situation. And I liked that in the moment. But I'm also very passive about people I take at face value. You are what you tell me you are, and you get to be anything you want to be when you're around me. Like even if you're a giant dick to other people, you get to be who you are around me. To me, I'll judge you on how you are around me.
Mhm. I'm the same person around you as around Devi as around anybody else. In fact,
And I believe it.
one of the things that people constantly comment on is, people will see the way that the two of us will interact with each other out in public, and then, they'll come over and they're expecting some, lovey-dovey couple, and we're still giving
Right.
each other the same amount of shit. And they're like, "Oh God, you guys act this way at home?" Yeah.
Yeah. Of
Yep.
course.
It's the same regardless.
Holy
So,
cow.
to me, like, the more people that we get into healthcare roles, regardless of who they are, yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be unfortunate that there's going to be people that will turn away Star because they don't like what they see.
Right.
It's no different than turning away a nurse because they're not pretty enough for you, a doctor because they're not pretty enough for you.
Right.
Motherfucker, are you saying you'd rather die because your eyes don't get eye candy? Fuck you.
But the weird thing is you also don't know the finished product. And I don't know how to say that in another way. If you're being seen by somebody, a nurse or a nurse practitioner or a doctor, they could be transgender in the final state
Oh,
of their transition, and you would never know. You know what I mean? That
you
nurse
know,
isn't going to walk in and be like, "Hey, I was transgender 10 years ago, but now," you know.
and that's the thing is like, it doesn't to me like I don't even care whether or not someone's passing or not. It doesn't matter. And I think that's that whole passing privilege is a whole nother discussion that I can't even begin to step in. That's for people smarter than me, who know more about this than me, who are more willing to dig into that than I am. Simply because I just I don't have the wherewithal to discuss that. But what it boils down to is that I don't, we have to accept people for the certification that they have, for the experience that they have, for the training that they have. And it doesn't matter whether or not you think, this person is going to be qualified because of X, Y, and Z. If they're certified in your state, then they're certified, period, end of story. And your only concern should be whether or not they work well with you as a provider patient relationship. When we look at why that is so important, one of the issues that many men have had, many women have had, many non-binary trans people, gay people have had is that they don't feel like they are being heard when they're trying to get care. And if there's a group of people out there that I'm going to trust to be able to hear that cry for help, it's going to be somebody who's been crying for help, who had cried for help themselves, got it, and now are able to help others.
I talked to Luna about the treatment she got when she was having her pregnancies and issues with it. And she said she was diminished just as being a black woman with a mental disability at the time, and it's
Right.
like, it's hard. And it's hard, I want to say, for like the nursing staff, and especially in ERs or in treatment centers, they get a lot of people that are very angry about being there. You know what I mean? I don't know why people are like, I need help. I hate you for giving it to me. But that's how it is. People in their crisis moment are just acting on adrenaline and instinct. And that's that lizard brain that I was talking about, the bear brain that we have in our bodies that says fight or flight. And both of those look like the same to me.
Yeah.
Man. So Congress is finally setting it up, dude. They're doing a discussion about banning lawmakers from trading stocks. And it
That
looks
needed to
like
happen.
the meeting is going to be March 9th. Now this is Thursday. I don't know what date that would be. It might have already happened. But I think this is really neat, They're talking about um fixing the penalties for non-disclosure and eliminating it. The one bill is for Congress, and then there's another bill. I'm trying to look in my notes that is Congress and spouses of Congress. And that just means putting it in a blind trust or not trading for the length of your term, which I think is
That's
cool.
like it's it's not that I don't think that Congress members should have um,
Investments, yeah.
investments. I just don't think that as long as they're a member of Congress, they should be the ones in control of their investments, or be able to
Right.
communicate about their investments. Like, that's bullshit. If you're going to do that kind of shit, then you need to give all of us that heads up and say, hey, dump this stock, you fucking
Agreed.
pricks.
Agreed. I mean, like Nancy Pelosi was like, "Hey, we're gonna start making these microchips in Ohio," and I was like, "Oh yeah, so you already bought stock in this stuff, right?" Like,
Right,
and
exactly.
and that's where we're at now. You can't promote anything good. Every bill comes with something that they've already invested in, right? Let's
Exactly.
invest in green technologies. Why? Because you just invested in Shell because they're about to go into it. That's
Right.
my problem. And Yeah, it creates a false stock market too, by the way. And that's why we had infrastructure week for 4 years every week, is because it jacked up the gravel stock that Elaine Chao, Mitch McConnell's wife, was an investor in. And it
Well, and
sucks.
remember when we had the GameStop, stock
Right.
market incident. It wasn't that people were fucking pissed about, the fact that they were pissed that, a bunch of fucking internet nerds figured out what the game was and they were able to
Right.
manipulate it in their favor for a change.
I like it. Be a capitalist.
Exactly. And then you had a bunch of, fucking senators go, "Oh, well, we got to fix this." Why? Because it tanked your
Right.
shit that
Did
you're
it?
investing in?
Did
Fuck
it?
you.
Who was investing in GameStop? Because didn't it just rise as they did that? It didn't hurt me that they did that. Did it
You
hurt
know,
people investing in other things?
well, and that's just it, is that, it's, the fucking meme stock of it all was great and wonderful and it was hilarious and I enjoyed it.
Right.
But at the same time too, it's like the fact that these politicians were pissed was is that, they weren't pissed that this was happening. They were pissed that it could happen to them and you could
Right.
go in and fuck up their value.
Well, because whoever owned the GameStop had to back up the price, right? So they had to have, like, I remember that app I use. I can't remember the app, but they had to come up with money to back the trades that were
Hmm.
going on with GameStop, and that was taking a lot of their
Robinhood.
resources away.
Was it Robinhood?
Robinhood, the Robinhood app, actually, they eventually
Yep.
said we're not going to cover GameStop transfers because we can't afford to back the price of it.
Hmm.
So I think that was the real issue. But it was, I mean, you're manipulating the system that other people are manipulating. Good for you, GameStop people. I hope you made a lot of money. You
Right.
know, but I
Oh,
just don't. I don't think they should, and I don't think people in power should be able to do that. I think they can have a mutual fund and put it in a blind sort of trust where it's being traded, and trust somebody to do that. And even
absolutely.
once in a while, be like, "Hey, what am I doing? Do you see any diversification in the future?" But I don't think they should be able to use their. I think that the mutual fund coordinator should report it if they're like, hey, by the way, do this. I think they should be reported.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Oh, defund the police, by the way. Don't defund
Yeah.
the police. Wait, don't defund the police. I can't remember my attention span. Joe Biden said something about defunding
Not
the police.
well, Biden was never for defunding the
Yeah, I
police.
know. I know.
That
It's a
was,
refund. It's a refunding of the
refund
police.
refund the wait.
Well, I
And
just think
that's
it's funny that one protester in the George Floyd protest shouted defund the police, and Republicans were like, that's what we're going to get them on. And ever since then it's just stuck to every Democrat, even though no Democrat ever said it,
very few have actually. And
right. Well,
and
there's some radical people that wanted it burned to the ground and built back up. They weren't talking about getting rid of police officers, but they wanted to get rid of the system because there's
right.
systemic institutional issues with it. So I can see that. Some people just want to
Right.
scrap it and start over. Other people want to fix what's there.
And
That's
that's
cool.
and that's what happened was is that, you saw people scrap, a large segment of their police, force, and
Hmm.
now they're having to hire it back on because they didn't actually have the resources in place that they needed. They
Right.
didn't have the laws in place that they needed. They didn't have jack shit in place that they needed. Like your police force needed to be continued at the same level, and you needed to hire on your resources, your
Yes.
mental health officers and things like that. Get them up to speed, get them moving, and then as crime decreased, if crime decreased, then you could look at taking those officers and doing other things with them.
Yeah. They're making more citizen panels and coordination with police and stuff like, yeah, 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 yeah. It's just like the mental health. It's the same with police officers. We need 1 million police officers. Where are they? At some point, you're going to degrade the quality of human that's applying for the job. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's my problem. We're not looking for quality, we're looking for quantity, and that's a real issue. We need
Right.
those mental health responders, but who is going to go to police training and then further their education into mental health training to go back to live on the streets and solve domestic violence issues.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to spend their life in the shittiest moments of other people's lives, you know?
Very few
Right.
people have the ability to do that, and hats off to them.
Yeah, but we need those people. We need to nurture those people. And I don't see any educational system in the making that's prepared to do that and to make them on a large scale. And by the way, when it comes to these mental health responders, they don't need to be Anglo white, right?
Right.
Like, this is a great position for legal immigrants to come in and have a role at this stuff. That would be great. If we could have legal immigrants coming in to break up illegal issues without sending the people to ICE, that would be great to me, because ICE is horrible. I'm not saying you need to disband the border. I believe you should. I don't believe you should get rid of the officials on the border, but you need to quality those people too. Like, they're they're bad. They abuse a system that's already ripe to abuse. So fuck you. Sorry. I'm really upset about immigration. That's the one thing. So Joe Biden, the one thing, oh, geez, it took me a half an hour to get to this. His
Yep.
his stance on immigration just made me sick. Like, I literally almost barfed, because I hate the Republican stance on immigration. So I have to turn to the Democratic response, which is constantly compromising with the Republican stance to demonize migrants. That's bullshit. Like, we don't need to secure our border by diminishing the people that are trying to flee death and destruction. We don't need to torture kids for profit. We don't need to leave people languishing on the other side of the border so we can say it's secured. Fuck you. You know, like Poland is letting millions of Ukrainians in because there's a conflict next door. We have, like, fucking Haiti had this volcano, this earthquake, this tsunami hit it, and we're like, no, no, fuck you. It just bugs me that we can't help people in need because, well, we want to compromise on border security. Just pisses me off. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, but that's what my stance is.
I mean, like the difference between Ukraine and all these other things is people expect Ukraine to get solved. Like people expect that Russia's going to go away, Ukrainians will go back to Ukraine. That's the real answer.
Right.
Whether or not that happens, who knows? That's a grand question. But the thing, like, where you have, a population on the southern border who's, trying to escape, either corrupt law or, cartels, it's like unless you have a plan to fix those, that problem is still going to continue. And we've talked about that time and time again. You have to actually fix the root cause of the problem.
Yeah.
You don't want people just showing up at your border. Period. End of story. And I don't know that there's much else to say on that one.
No, it's gross. I mean, sorry, both sides. Shame on you. It's gross. So anyway, I saw a thread. Sorry, that was an add in, by the way. If you look at my note, it isn't even in there, but it was something I was really pissed about. So First Draft News has this thing because they're talking about there's a rise in misinformation, Jeffrey, when it comes to the Ukraine storytelling on social media, right? And
Mhm.
I wanted to address that because I think we've talked about misinformation and disinformation before, and they have some tips, and I wanted to get your opinion on it, right?
Mhm.
So, first and foremost, be wary of the difference between misinformation and disinformation.
Mhm.
And I think what they say, it's intent.
Yep.
Okay, good. Because I don't quite understand how to describe that. I'm
Mm,
just reading the.
misinformation is like, you get something wrong on accident and then it just spreads.
Okay.
Disinformation is you were intentionally spreading false information.
Using specific language.
Like, so it's like I missed the mark. you know
Gotcha.
Whereas disinformation is like I'm legitimately, trying to spread falsehoods.
Okay. And
We can think of propaganda as disinformation. Propaganda is intentionally, the spread of false narrative and news in order to, do any number of things.
Right.
Whereas, like misinformation, for example, would be like, oh, the Ukrainians shot down, an Su-35, and it's like, no, they didn't shoot down an Su-35, they shot down an Su-25.
Right. Okay. And like disinformation is we shot down a unicorn.
Disinformation would be that, you know,
We
there are
shot down
no
20
there
of
are
them.
no supply issues with the Russian army.
Right.
That we are strategically parked because this is what we plan to do.
That's
And
so
the Ukrainians,
hilarious. Yeah.
or even and here's the other thing too, is that there's been plenty of Ukrainian propaganda too. And that's the real threat about wartime is that nobody's going to put out information saying, yeah, we're getting our ass handed to us here. Why? Because you don't want to fuck up morale. But at the same time, too, like you have to take some of this news with a grain of salt. And that's where you have some significant issues. Like, Western reporters, like right now, you've got like the Mirror, for example, that's one, or the Daily Mail, or even some US news sources that are copying, pasting stuff out of, say Pravda, which is
Right.
one of Ukraine's papers. And some of that I'm like, I could really use some third party verification on that, and you never get it. And
Right.
that's the issue, is you're not getting any sort of verification that says, yeah, we've reached out to independent sources and we've confirmed, or we've seen this video and we've confirmed the authenticity of it. And
Right.
that's the issue at hand, is that misinformation and disinformation, sometimes the authenticity uh, is very hard to confirm. Misinformation is usually just somebody screwed something up.
Right.
But with disinformation, there it is intentional that you're unable to confirm some of these claims. And then
Okay.
oftentimes there's a nugget of truth to them. Like, for
There's
example,
always a nugget. There's always a nugget of truth.
if a good propaganda will always have a nugget of truth to it, and sometimes good propaganda will mostly be based on the truth. I mean, the
Right.
reality is that the Ukrainians are taking down a lot of fucking Russian armor and a
Well,
lot of Russian aircraft. To what extent, that's remain to be confirmed. But
mm,
that's
yeah.
and that's the real issue, is that you've got Russia saying, oh, we've only lost this much, and you've got Ukraine saying, oh, well, we've taken out X, Y, and Z amount, and it's maybe somewhere in the middle, maybe closer towards Ukraine's side, maybe not. And
Maybe.
it's hard to say without having some type of asset being able to confirm that. And so unless you're getting independent reports from you know different journalists inside of Ukraine that are embedded with a lot of these different soldiers,
Sure.
it's hard to say.
Not really a fact that's relevant. Like, if you can't trust that fact, it's one you can let go. It doesn't really matter how many people on either side have died when you can see the destruction going on. And misinformation to me is Vladimir Zelensky being excited about being anxious and excitable and having an adrenaline and saying, it's crazy. And somebody else being rational about the conversation. His
Mhm.
misinformation is exaggeration through exhilaration. I don't, is there a bad word for that? He's scared to death, and he's shouting. And sometimes people that are scared say things that exaggerate the true facts, but it's real to them because he's being bombed, he's being targeted, he's going to
Right.
die if they find him.
I mean, and that's just and that's, you have to remember, like, intent. It really boils
Right.
down to intent.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
his intent might not be to lie to us, but what has been given to us isn't exactly true.
Right.
Whereas, disinformation is Russia, Putin saying that it's a special military operation and it's a full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
And they're
Not a
going after
special,
Nazis. What the fuck? That's so
yeah,
weird.
going after Nazis in a country that's led by a Jew. Uh-huh.
And again, is Vladimir Putin lying or not? He's obviously lying because I had it. He's either stupid and thinks there's Nazis in Ukraine, or he's smart and he's lying, right? It's one of the two. And
Well,
either
and when
one,
you
he's full of
control
shit about it.
the narrative within your own country, it makes
Oh
it
my
pretty clear
God,
which it
yeah.
is.
They are locking down. And how do you explain that? Oh, we're just locking down because we're doing the right thing. That doesn't make sense. Right? Are Russians like, wait, oh, okay, we're doing a great job over there, and that's why you don't want to tell us? Like, why
Hmm.
is independent news shutting down? Because it's propaganda that they can't go along with. Russia told them either quit or stop using the word war or invasion.
Right, and so that's what it boils down to
Mhm.
that's where the problem is.
And there's another one, and the second is visual information, right? And that's a
Hmm.
big thing these days. And have you heard about that? Like this video technology that can actually fake video fakes?
Deep fakes.
Deep fakes, yeah. So there's deep fakes, and then there's these pictures being put out with layers on them, and there's ways to look to check their authenticity. But have you seen this stuff, like this
Oh, I've
deep
seen
fakes and
plenty
stuff?
of deep fakes. There's a lot of deep fakes out there. You look at some of the ones that were happening. Even just during our election cycle,
Oh yeah, yeah,
where the
yeah.
Republicans were putting out like videos of that showed Pelosi slowed down and it looked like she was
Right.
slurring her words.
It was
That's
so
I mean.
obvious though.
I mean, and that's the thing is like, look, do I like Pelosi? No, but I don't like the fact that you're lying about what's happening.
Right. Did you see the Tom Cruise Paris Hilton video?
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's where the deep fake conversation came in because she posted a video eating breakfast with Tom Cruise and nobody could tell that it wasn't Tom Cruise, that it
Right.
was just a fake. And then it was like, wow. And there's a couple on YouTube, a couple Russians, right? Or Russian animated individuals that are spreading propaganda. And then they were caught as like
Hmm.
fakes because she had two different earrings on. It was like two different faces or something they
Right.
put together. Just so weird, right?
Deepfakes are going to be a problem.
Yeah,
There it's a new part of the disinformation tactic.
right,
You're going to have, as CGI has gotten insanely realistic, and depending on how much information you have on a person, you can create a pretty damn lifelike looking CGI model. And
right,
depending on your ability to synthesize somebody's voice, you're going to have the ability to make this recording sound like somebody that you might know and love. I mean,
right.
you've even got people who are such amazing voice actors that they could literally sound exactly like a person that you're expecting to be talking to, and it's not them.
Right. So I don't know how to do this, and I'm gonna give you a second if you can. Running reverse image searches, what is that? Like what is that?
So, reverse image searches, there's a couple of different ways that you can do this.
I just don't know what it is. Like I've never even done it.
So, there's uh I want to say there's one called TinEye, and then there's one called, and then Google does reverse image search. And essentially what you do is you download an image and then you go into Google or this other program and it'll show you when it was first uploaded. You can look this up on how to do this. It's actually pretty interesting. But there's a couple of different ways that you can match up these images. So for example, um, it'll look at things like metadata, for example. So it'll look at, when the image was first created. If the image has been passed down a bunch of times, it'll look to see what the metadata is. The quality of the image might suck, but it'll sit down and go, okay, yeah, this image was first uploaded in 2013, for example. Or what it'll do is it'll scan the photo. Google Lens is amazing at this, and it'll look up any number of different parts of the photo. Like I use Google Lens, for example, for identifying plants. If there's a plant that I'm not sure of. But what it can do is that it can also take parts of a photograph and go, okay, the first time that we saw this was 2012 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so reverse image searches can it can go a couple of different ways. There's different bots out there that can help you with this, but the point is to figure out when an image was first uploaded, and whether it be part or the whole, like,
Mhm.
and as automation technology improves, you're going to be able to see, oh hey, this image, this part of the image was first uploaded in 2012, this part of the image was first uploaded in 2013, this
Okay.
whole image was first uploaded in 2021. you know and that's where reverse image searches come in handy, like especially as you're trying to backtrack who some of these individuals are.
And it suggests there it this post, I'm going to leave a link to it. There's some suggestions that I don't like recommend, and other things they want you to archive this stuff, they want you to report it, they want you to share links, and I don't believe in all that kind of stuff, but I want people to at least recognize what imposters are, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that's good. And like, because we do care about what we're seeing. We want to believe our own eyes. And so I like the idea of giving somebody information on how to at least check that basic stuff, right? And
Yep.
what is it? They have what is this? Red Eye? Extension Red Eye is one of the
Yeah.
things they recommend.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And then there's imposter accounts, right?
Hmm.
And so there's fake people. And so I wanted to give some information at least about how to quickly just go through and see some of the things that you can see to see if they're an imposter. And the first one here is to check primary sources. So when they do have a post, check the sources within the post to see if the sources are valid. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then the next one, are they on other social sites? Are they on other social media? Do they have social media linked to that account? And that way you can get a broader perspective on who they are. I think we'd both agree with that.
Yep.
Do they use the same handle on every um, platform that they have? I
Mm,
try and keep mine homogenous, but a lot of people don't do that if they're personal people. You know what I
right.
mean?
And really, like especially what it boils down to is like sometimes you'll have like Reddit, for example, like to post in certain subreddits, you have to have like a minimum karma amount. So you'll have relatively young accounts that post some pretty, you know,
Wild
benign
stuff.
things.
Oh,
Not
okay.
even they'll post some benign things to get their karma count up, and and
Ah,
and then they'll move into posting other things, and it's like the only the posts that you start to see is like, oh yeah, okay, that's a bot clearly, or that's part of somebody's troll farm or whatever.
right.
But as you start to see sites get cut off, you start to see less and less of that.
Right. Um, do you have wait, let's just get through this first. Contact information. You can look for contact information from them, but I'll tell you that in this day and age, I don't put contact information on my stuff, like because it'll get hacked, it'll get attacked by trolls. So I don't know. You can check their contact information if they're a
Yeah.
business, if they're a business or a journalist or something, there might be other ways to verify. But I would at that point, if you have a question about it, I just like,
Well, and that's one of those things. Like, let's say that they have an address listed in Russia. What are you gonna do? Are you actually gonna go to Russia and be like, "Yo, knock, knock,
right,
knock, motherfucker, are you actually this person?"
right. But if it's an account telling you vaccines are bad and you look and you see it has an address in Russia, at least you know there's a manipulation there.
Which case, that's a whole nother issue at hand is whether or not you can even for example, sometimes you can actually do IP lookups on certain things, and that'll tell you where it's being posted from. It's a little bit more difficult to do. It's a much more advanced technique, but a lot of the times what you'll see is especially sites like Reddit, they can kind of break down where some of these posts are coming from, and they shut down a lot of bots.
Cool. I always think of mail, like when I get a strange email, I click on the above name to see where the email is, right? Because I
Yep.
get stuff like, hey, Amazon bill. And then I look and it's like Joe Schmo 3421 at gmail.com. And I'm like,
Right.
aha.
I think one of the important things that people are going to need to recognize is that you're probably going to need to update some passwords here pretty soon. Like
Always.
especially if you're used to having your passwords, set it and forget it.
Right.
There's a lot of there are a lot of leaked email addresses and things like that. And so as much of a pain in the ass as it is, you're going to have to go in and update some of these accounts so that way you can make sure that your whatever is out there
Hmm.
is going to be old, and they're not going to be able to use your information to access it. So
Yeah.
in times like this, I can't stress enough, make sure that you're looking out for your own information security.
Yeah. I spend my mornings going through my emails and blocking contacts, you know, like Subway. I can't get off their mailing list. I just blocked the contact. Taco Bell, like on all these scammy things. And now I'm getting notifications that other things were from the same lists that I've blocked. So that's kind of cool. I'm catching a whole bunch of scammers that way. And I never knew how to do that with my emails. And another thing is when they joined, and this one I thoroughly agree with, because bots will join and 2 days later have 10 followers and they will be all up in someone's shit, you know. But when you
Absolutely.
click on the name, and all you have to do is hover over the name, and it'll show you how many followers they have when they joined. And just don't give them any credibility. Don't talk to them. They're just not real. Their job is to find out what annoys you so they can continue doing that. So when you fight with them, you tell them what annoys you, and that feeds them. Just don't do it. Just
Right.
block them and go on with life. Who do they follow? I've done that. Like, who is
Hmm.
this account? We did that. I had a Afghanistanian guy, Afghan,
Afghani.
Afghani male tell me he was in real trouble. And I looked at his followers and it was 100 MAGA accounts. And I was like, oh, snap, and I didn't fall for that scam. But he wanted to be on our show. And I was like, no, because you are MAGA. So that's a good way for me to separate. And then finally, um, you're going to see a lot of stuff about Ukraine, a lot of horrible things, and you need to take a break from this stuff.
Yep.
I think that's important. And
Absolutely.
I've been ignoring the news based on that. I mean, I'm sorry if you're going to show me more stories about the refugees, they're all the same story and they're all horrible and I hate them all, but
Hmm.
I hate it. They sound the same to me. I'm sorry. It's just you're grabbing any Ukrainian to be on your news media, and it just irritates me. It's like, let's get somebody, not let's solve their problem. And media is horrible that way.
Hmm.
Any closing statements? Any recommendations? Any words of positivity?
Get outside if you can. Get outside.
There you go.
Smell some air. Like especially after the last 2 years, we've all been trapped
Yeah.
inside. We've limited ourselves. Some of us have, and if we've got to get a break from screen time. Realistically, I'm going to be doing that this afternoon.
Love that.
and
All right.
and it's important for your mental health, and especially in trying times, to make sure you're getting away from the screen and getting
For sure.
and getting some good quality time in for yourself.
And I love that advice is coming at the end of our 2-hour live stream.
Hmm.
I heard
We.
some great advice on a TV show that I picked up on. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called The Owl House.
Mhm.
And I Jeffrey, if you get a chance, watch it. Like for me, anime is the first couple episodes are all set up and plot settings and all this stuff. And if I can get through that, I'll enjoy the show. And I never know
Mhm.
what I'm gonna like, but this show is just adorable. So if you
Hmm.
get a chance, watch the Owl House. But there was this scene where that one of the characters gives somebody a note and it says, "Try quitting. It's like trying, but a lot easier." And I was like, that goes with my philosophy. So try quitting. You don't have to hate everything. You don't have to actively fight everything. You can just quit and go on about your day.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to Public Access America. We love you. I love you, Jeffrey. I love your
Love
whole
you too.
family. I can't wait to find out next week what you did today.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Jeffrey. You're
Yeah.
amazing. That's
Ah.
it. It's really all I got.
Perfect.
I'm going to go